one.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jack Callow. Today, on this lovely little episode of The Exchange, we have Becks, Lawson, and Maxine Finch, the governor and lieutenant governor running in this state's election. Well, not currently governor, but running to become governor. Maxine, Becks, hello.
Sorry.
Hey,
Sorry,
thanks
I'm a
for
little
having
antsy.
us, Jack.
Hi, Jack.
So, why don't we start a little bit of introduction? Let the people get to know who you guys are outside of all these rumors and mudslinging.
Oh, absolutely. So, my name is Becks Lawson. I've been a part of San Andreas for, I want to say, almost 3 years now. I own Sapphire Falls Vineyard. I am the editor-in-chief of Clout magazine and the author of Conviction, My Life in Politics, as well as the owner of Hourglass Publishing. I'm a 4-time state representative, and I'm running for governor of San Andreas.
And you, Maxine?
Hi. My name is Maxine Finch. I started in San Andreas as a reporter with Weasel News, and I worked my way up from being a normal correspondent intern to the director of correspondence. I dealt with a lot of being in politics, not as a politician, but as a political journalist. I used to follow everyone, including Becks, for quite some time on what they did, and I grew to like a lot of it. And so I decided to run last term. I am currently a state representative. It is my first term. I am the secretary of the legislative. It's been fun, tough, but fun. And I also am currently the chairman for the Board of Education. I was good friends with Carmen, and she decided to reach out to me when she decided to step down from it. And I've been working there trying to revive it. It's a slow process, but we are making headway. And I'm excited to see it off the ground. Other than that, I work at Stella Bella, and that's also something I do. Stella's a great friend. I met her at Weasel, but other than that, I just do my own thing.
That's a wonderful introduction, honestly. I feel like people really neglect to get to know politicians besides their policies,
Oh, absolutely. I've been part of the government for the better part of a year now, just pure chronologically serving as a rep. And I think every politician, as much as we all like to say we're here for the people, we all have our own pasts and perspectives, and we each bring something to the position from that.
Just between us and the general audience listening, is there a department you found more enjoyable, like working with over time?
So off the top of my head, the Rangers were fantastic to work with. We did an overhaul of their legislation because it was all over the place. You needed a treasure map and, a Sherpa to get through everything the Rangers had on the books, spread across like 8 different documents. So working with Charlie Morgan, Lilith Tarts, and the other command at the Rangers was a lot of fun. We got a lot done. And SAFA, of course, were pretty busy with monitoring the skies and all, but I had a good time working with the chief pilot and second in command on coming up with their core legislation as well, which is in similarly dire straits. But I don't think there's any department I had a negative experience with this term at all.
And you, Maxine?
So I think surprisingly it was law enforcement, not Rangers. Rangers are always a delight. I've never had a problem with them before, but law enforcement across the board, I got to see more of them than ever before. As a reporter, they often ran for me. I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all, actually. But I did get to see face-to-face, meet with them face-to-face for the first time, and they weren't running away. And they were very funny, and they were very honest and forward and straight about what they wanted. I wasn't able to pass any of the bills they had for it because it kind of went against the Constitution in some ways. In some ways, it just wasn't something we could pass. But I did, for a while there, have 3 drafts. I was working with them, and I still want to go for another ride-along with Chris Stevens. He's got to be one of my favorite cops. But yeah, I'm glad to see cops up front, and not caricatures of who we assume they are. They have problems, but they're individuals and they're quite kind and funny.
Now, probably the first bit of a hot take. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but it's just a question I'm throwing out there. If you were to rank the departments, who would you rank in first and at the bottom?
Oh no.
I don't actually think there's a clear bottom pick. I think the most you could say is that certain departments are just super busy. Like, getting in touch with LEO can be difficult because you call, a member of LEO, and half the time I call them and they're like, I'm being shot at, or I'm on the way to a robbery. Can I call you back? Which isn't, a problem, right? I would definitely prefer they deal with getting shot at over answering the phone. But like that's honestly the worst we have to deal with is just people being busy, and no wonder they're busy. Like, if you're running the hospital or serving as law enforcement, your hands are going to be full, right? So that's probably the most negative experience I've had. I have been really blessed otherwise that it's been pretty positive across the board.
Ranking. I have no troubles this time with any branch. But I'll have to say, probably putting the legislative and the executive at the bottom. Seeing them face to face up front. Oh, with my new coworkers and the executive. It's like two siblings battling it out all the times. We all want the same thing, but we can't really talk about it properly. Uh, Other than that, all the other departments were very straightforward and kind, and I really enjoyed the Rangers as much as Becks did. But I've been meeting with Justin Cook a lot more and seeing Sam's up front as we try to finalize some pieces for the Sam's part of the legislative overhaul. It's been nice, and they're very polite.
I honestly expected nothing less of an answer from you two, especially when it came to trying to rank them. That being said, though, you did mention that you're helping SAMs and a bunch of other departments like work through their legislation. What can we expect from you two that would be different from what we currently have or have had in the past as far as like legislation and bills?
Can I go first this time?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm currently working on the Sam's part of the legislative overhaul. Bex is taking hands off as we get closer to the end, and she's cleaning up the library and preparing for holidays, of course, because she deserves relaxation too. But I'm working with Justin Cook and Sam's to write a core bill for medical services. They technically don't have one. They do have a restructure bill, which is HR 074, but they don't actually have a true structure bill for any of the departments other than probably more board of medicine. Other than that, so I'm trying to define it further. They are in the Constitution, so they still exist, but they aren't defined. And other than that, they were talking about trying, because of the complete disappearance of SAS, we were trying to create protection bills for them so they can hire their own security, not private security outside, but they're gonna have in-house security that they want, as well as going over the Health Protection Act and trying to find that better HIPAA-wise. That is some stuff we're hoping to do, and some stuff I'm trying to work on. I don't think I'll meet all of them before the end of the term, but it's my aim to at least get the core bill out so they have structure.
And you, Bex?
So when it comes to the next term, you know, what I'm really looking at is I'm not a legislator if I go for governor, right? I have actually ended all of the possible terms that I can serve as legislator. I've run out of term limits. But I think what we have really failed to see from previous executive branches is a body that governs all of the branches, right? Like, when it comes to communication between the departments, when it comes to having the government move in one solid direction, working together and coordinating, I don't think we've seen that. And part of that is there are tools available to the executive branch that are just not being utilized. Part of it is, the way that specific executive branches have run cabinet meetings and gone about their daily operations. I think at this point, thanks to the wealth of experience I have, the projects I've completed, my resume, as it were, I'm able to not just recognize the tools that the executive branch has, but use them to get things done start to finish. So here's an example. We were discussing the Rangers bill, and something that came up was bag limits, and it becomes, well, what are the conditions where someone might want a bigger bag of pelts? So with my experience, I'm able to go, okay, What about a commercial fishing slash hunting license? I'm able to figure out who to talk to in the community about these things. I'm able to work with the federal government to see what can be done on that end. I'm able to create a plan with each step clearly defined and laid out and execute it. I think that's something that's, incredibly valuable. Not just the ability to make promises, but the ability to tell you how I will achieve each step. If you check out our website, lawsonfinch2024.com, we talk about some of our plans. And over the campaign trail, I plan to talk about how I intend to fulfill those. These aren't just empty promises I'm making. This is part of a game plan that I can spell out every step of the way.
Ooh, if we're talking about next term, if we get the executive branch win, I really want to get rid of Lieutenant Governor's mansion. It screams oligarchy, icky, icky, eat the rich, eat the rich. I don't. I want to see if we can start donating it to a government branch who can utilize it better for business, not for whatever is going on there. I don't. Icky.
And would you be opposed to going on the free market?
I think
would
that's
love it on
probably
the free
something that would
market.
be blocked federally, unfortunately, just because of the history of the property. I've talked about DHS just because, for instance, like, it has a large kitchen and dining area. That might be something that's appropriate for soup dinners. The ranch on the property, I think there's a very good argument to be made that the Rangers could get a lot of use out of that. Just having
Hell,
it,
DHS could use their soup kitchen.
absolutely, like, for me, just having it as a home, that's great. Homes are great. People want roofs over their head, and this is a very competitive housing market. So I get that. But at the same time, having a property of that size and sophistication be used simply as a home, even if it's a home that is held by the lieutenant governor, just kind of says it's like Maxine says. It's a little bit
Oligarchy.
indulgent, yes.
Yeah, I just don't. The biggest arguments I've heard against it, and I'll continue on because we're getting off topic. Well, we're not getting off topic. We're just talking a lot.
Go ahead.
The most arguments I've gotten against that idea, Becks, was, oh, but it's for protection. I would argue that it's a terrible protection spot. There are no walls. There are tons of open windows, completely open windows with no curtains, tons of doors, and multiple ways you can break in, and giant hills around you, so people can sit there and hide in a bush on a mountain and watch you. I do think there is a governor's mansion, but it's in the city. I think that one has high walls, had a gate that can lock, and it's a lot harder to get into and a lot safer. Smaller windows, curtains, of course. No. Yeah. I was hoping to put it on the free market, but we'll see what we can do with it. But I won't be taking it if we win. Neither will Becks.
All right. Wonderful. That actually does answer that question. Now, onto a bit of more unsavory topic for the both of you. Recently, there has been a website, obviously. Becks Lawson is a fraud. So, is there anything you'd like to nip in the bud now? Bad rumors, controversy, see could be possibly looming over your campaign.
I'm not too worried about that website because it is stuffed with half-truths. There's a lot of jumping to conclusions. There's a lot of stuff on there that has already been addressed in my book previously mentioned, Conviction, My Life in Politics. But I think that website, what it really speaks to is people are concerned that there's some hidden conspiracy, that I'm getting the seat so that I can wiggle my fingers and enact my devious little schemes. Well, I mean, if you're worried about that, I would love to have you look at the work that I did this Congress. I'm not exactly writing, the Be Nice to Becks Lawson Act. Instead, I'm writing acts to help strengthen SAPA and their rangers, to help enable the creative fields, to protect artists, to ensure that their creative rights are safe from corporations. Things to help organize the courts. Things that are, by and large, very benevolent. And I feel like you can tell that the individual acts that I've written are well-intentioned because even the site can't go after the content of any of them. certainly whoever this author is who refuses to, divulge their own identity for whatever reason, they go, oh, that's just Becks taking credit for things. It's really not. It's
They didn't
me.
even read the whole news release for. They didn't even read the news release about what the legislative overall is. We never claimed that you wrote these old bills. We merged them together. We repealed old, unnecessary bills. That was the point of a legislative overhaul. And if they read that press release, they would understand that. But they say otherwise in the website that we're taking the words of them. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, if you would prefer to read through 8 separate bills posted over the course of 2 years that contradict each other to understand a department, that's certainly your choice. But I think it's pretty clear to look at the archive of 250 plus bills, many of which have 8 bills dedicated to one topic, some of which have bills that contradict each other, so you have to manually check each bill to understand what the actual law is. That's what we cleaned up, and I take a lot of pride in that. So that's regarding the legislative stuff. I feel like we've done incredible work, and that work really speaks for itself. Everything else is just, it's mudslinging, and
nitpicking and unclear information.
And in a way, I think it's actually flattering to have people bring up stuff from 2 years ago. How many politicians, how many public figures have reputations that reach back 2 years? I'm not asking everyone in the state to think that I'm their best friend, but I think just the merit of my work and the dedication put into it speaks to itself. And this person, whoever it is, they're certainly welcome to run such a website, but I think it's pretty clear how stuff full of half-truths, straight-up lies, stringing facts together to come to false conclusions, and just real petty insults is quite plain.
And since there's not a lot written about me, I can address the few there are. The Chief Justice bills, those were handed to us by U.S. Congress. If the Judiciary worked on the U.S. Congress failed to explain that to us and failed to give them credit. Other than that, the second bill, Standards for Chief Justice, completely wrote on my own. Liam McGrath reviewed it, but completely wrote it on my own. So that's a false claim as well if you're saying I didn't write that at all. Took components from the first one, of course, but I wrote the second one completely by myself, including the part where it says election fraud, because I care about consequences to actions. We can also talk about the Board of Education, since that's a new thing that brought up today. The Board of Education was dying, and I took the seat because it was dying. And then I made it very clear in my meeting notes, which, by the way, were up to date up that point by the time he pushed out the Board of Education that was voted on, and up to date, because I missed November. That was the one I was behind on. And I explained what we were doing. And in fact, the Board of Education is more active than ever. And it's slow. But it's more active than ever. And I kept it from dying. I don't see the problem with trying to keep a department that makes no money at all, $0 from the government, and has no access to cabinet meetings or anything alive is a bad thing. But if people want to say that, then okay. My meeting notes, I was going through a mental breakdown. If you want me to explain further, we can talk privately, but I don't think everyone wants to hear me trauma dump them at the moment. I was overwhelmed, overworked, afraid, and I'm sorry that I'm human. I do realize, though, that is a responsibility that I was faulty on, and so I took responsibility, talked to Jacob Wheeler, and he added a section in the Election and Transparency Bill to prevent anyone from being late ever again. I took accountability and responsibility. So if I can't really give you much else for the meeting notes. That's all there really was about me, I think. Yeah. But it's all out there in the open. Some of these things you write on your website, not White Rabbit, but is it White Rabbit? Yeah, White Rabbit. You would actually find the answers to if you read my meeting notes. So you complain about my reading notes, but you don't actually read them. Yeah. For example, at Sam's part, Becks, they said that we're not even trying for Sam's. My meeting notes for the last 4 weeks have been talking about Sam's. Since the beginning of the term, we've been talking about Sam's. Yeah, I don't know what they want. They're not going to actually do proper research.
That being said, though, because the allegations of corruption and everything else, right? Do you feel that compared to back then, when the corruption trial happened, to now, that there hasn't been enough oversight over not just legislative but the executive branch?
I would say it's less a matter of not enough oversight and more the oversight that we have isn't well explained or well utilized. I've had people come to me this Congress and they would go, I didn't even realize that bills were being posted, right? Which is deeply unfortunate because people had feedback they wanted to give and they didn't even realize it was up for debate. So, as a governor, lieutenant governor, something we would do is first of all, we would be making things very clear. So, for instance, we would probably have our own independent news source that says, oh, HR 359 or whatever was put out today. 359 does X, Y, and Z. It is open for feedback for X days. Go ahead and talk to this representative about it. I think as well, there's room for more than one public meeting between the executive branch and the people, right? Like, as the executive branch, I think you should be incredibly public. I think it should be incredibly easy to get in touch with you because at the end of the day, you work for the people. So, with the legislature, what we've been doing in the last leg of the term is all of our meetings have been open to the public. So you can see the bills as we're writing on them, as we're negotiating the terms, and as we're voting on them. And I think that's something where that does a lot, right? Like, we didn't change the amount of time that feedback is open, but we made it so much easier to see what the legislature are up to. So I'd love to see that sort of transparency come to the executive branch for open meetings, open doors, and open lines of communication between the public. Things shouldn't feel hidden away, even if that's not the intent. I think for many people it feels like things happen behind the closed doors. So let's go ahead, throw those doors open, shine a light on things. Because I can tell you, I have zero shame about anything I submitted this Congress or any other Congress. I'm happy to defend every decision I made and to talk through the reasons as to why I did what I did. There is no light, no level of scrutiny that I'm afraid of. I welcome it all.
I think there could be definitely more oversight for the government as a whole. There's a lot of many holes that need patching. I put a constitutional amendment out actually recently for the legislative branch because there was no oversight on modifications and editing to bills. Becks came to me with the idea and I expanded on it. There's always improvement, even 3 years after the establishment of the current constitution. I think the biggest problem, though, is the lack of participation and as well transparency from all departments, describing what they're doing. I think opening the meetings for the last few weeks have been really great on us, but I think we can go further in the future, especially in the executive, because outside of press releases and videos, you don't really, and now the upcoming cabinet meeting notes that are required to do, we don't really know what's going on anywhere. Not even fellow government officials can sometimes tell what each other are doing without clear written or clear recorded evidence. But yeah, it definitely needs expanded on. I'd argue that we should probably try expanding on FOIA requests for us, but that's an empty thought at the moment.
So do you feel like the government itself, like down to each department, just isn't communicating properly with the civilians? Do you think there's more they can do? Do you think they already do too much? Or is it just the nature of the job where they can't afford to be too transparent?
I think what you're seeing is there's plenty of communication happening. It's just not good or productive communication. And I'll give you an example from this term. So I'm working on the SAFA overhaul bills. The SAFA overhaul bills are just, like I mentioned earlier, curating and collecting 8 existing bills that simply, had gathered up, they contradict each other, etc. So I submit those bills. There is a cabinet meeting. Cabinet meetings, only the heads of departments are allowed, and the legislature is not allowed. So at that cabinet meeting, the governor tells the head of SAFA that the bill is going to get vetoed. I don't hear this. I'm not in tune with this. So the chief pilot has to communicate with me about that. So already you have one meeting, what could have been one meeting, being turned into 2 lines of communication. Then, at the following rep meeting, 2 cops come. They go, Well, Chief Lee asked us to be present because Damien said we would be discussing the SAFA bill. So now, again, the cabinet meeting, you could have just had me, Vlad, and Damien in that meeting where we could have discussed the veto. Now you have a second meeting being turned into a continuation of the conversation with two more party members who don't actually know what the conversation is. They've just been sent as a proxy. So that's plenty of effort, that's plenty of communication. But like none of it actually manages to solve the problem very effectively, right? So I think a lot of it is just having the courage and logistical organizational skills to have things like the cabinet meetings be as open as possible to get as much done as possible so that there's not, 7 different meetings between 8 different parties when you can just have one conversation among peers.
Mm. I can even tell you from an outside perspective, for a year as a reporter, government can always be a lot more transparent and be more descriptive about what they're doing. Every department, not just the legislative or the executive, but every department does not do a lot of PR. I think it's because they're busy, and sometimes it's because they think people might not care, but there's a lot more things that can be improved on. More press releases, more meetings, more Q&As, maybe even classes or sit downs privately with people outside of the state. There's communication is it's got a lot to prove on, and if the last meeting was anything to show, I doubt it's the only thing going on inside the entire government where people aren't communicating properly. Not with each other and not with the public. So yeah.
So would that be something you want to improve going forward, as if you get elected?
Oh,
To the
absolutely.
Hmm.
How would you go about that?
So, cabinet meetings are one thing I mentioned earlier. We would bring the legislature back into those cabinet meetings because
Bless you.
I think it's pretty important to ensure that, all the people who are going to be affected by the government's decisions are able to be there to hear about those decisions being made. In addition, you're going to see a lot more executive appearances than just at the town halls. So, like, at the vineyard, there have been times I go, I'm clocked in, I'm here, come talk to me. I'll do it at the vineyard, I'll do it at City Hall. Um, when I'm around and open for conversations. So, just the having regular access to the governor and then having the governor's regular meetings that are used for communications actually used to their full potential will be a great start. I can't make many promises after that because we're going to have to see how the system comes together. But I think just following off the standard I've set off as a state representative so far, it's clear that there's a lot more room to communicate and discuss things.
Lieutenant Governor, if we do win, press releases. I started very strong, the legislative branch, at the beginning of the term, and then my brain went oopsie doopsie, and I didn't finish as strong. So I think I would probably work on a lot more press releases and make sure they're passed to all respected media outlets, as well as put on social media. Other than that, maybe we could work on, as you know, you can make websites. We could try making easy to read graphics from websites. Politics is boring. It can be very dull and hard to follow, and so we can make it easy, make it fun to engage with us with events where we have Q&As as well as laughing about what's going on. Events, press releases, and everything Becks just said. There's a lot we can do. Yeah.
Honestly, very good answer. So, as we wind down here, just 2 more questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've spoken about improving transparency between the executive and the civilians, along with the legislative, executive, and a bunch of other departments. Now, if there was one thing with no restriction, no matter what department it was, that you could change, like no one's standing in your way, what would it be?
I would want a lot more civilian integration into certain programs. So, for instance, when it comes to LEO, I know they've put a lot of work into civilian outreach programs and a media office. I'm not sure what the current state of those is, but I think that's a great program. Like, I think when it comes to DOCL, when it comes to SAMS, when it comes to basically any department that works with the public should have a way to express feedback and be able to see some sort of change, right? Because at the end of the day, public service is for the public. And I think making it so that there's more room for people to speak, for people to follow relevant investigations, for people to give input that you can't get behind a desk in City Hall, I think that would be a massive step forward.
For me, if there was no red tape, and leaps I had to cross to get something fixed in the government, discipline for every department when incompetence gets in the way. My biggest problem, and something that's very complex, and it's why it's not on our platform, because I'll be working towards it, but there is no way to explain how that would happen, because it's a very complex issue. Discipline for when people, in the most crude way possible, screw up. And this is all departments, not just one I'm about to say, but I will use some examples. DOJ and the cops sometimes mess up high-profile cases, which makes people anywhere from killers to government officials walk away with no repercussions, and then it's never investigated again. It upsets me, and I think it upsets a lot of people to see government officials, high-profile criminals, terrorists, and serial killers on the streets getting away with things because people in the government aren't disciplined. They aren't met with any repercussions when they flop repeatedly. If there's a pattern of issues, like police brutality is a pattern of issue with one cop, or filing wrong paperwork is a file issue with a prosecutor or a lawyer, there should be something done about it, but there's not. And if it is, we're not seeing it. How does anyone know things are improving? How these people are getting better at doing their jobs if we don't see what's going on? That is my biggest pet peeve for the longest time. I explained it to Damien Key. I explained it to multiple people. But I'm concerned that someone's going to take advantage of that incompetence and get away with letting their friends get away with crimes, because it's very easy for anyone to screw up, and the government currently, and nothing has ever dealt with it again. It's upsetting because there seems to be no repercussions for those on top, and that's scary.
You couldn't be more right. That is a constant issue we do have in the city, but it's an issue that we don't really see end results for. A lot of those things are kept behind closed doors, after all.
I think that's an issue within itself, but I've heard a lot of arguments against my own opinions.
No, of course, everyone has an opinion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. That being said, before we get to the final question, are there any closing remarks you'd like to make?
No, I've already received a lot of support, a lot of kind words, a lot of people saying that they'll be voting for me and Maxine, and all I can say is I am so grateful for every piece of advice, every piece of feedback, even the hostile stuff, even the irritated stuff, even the stuff that's just, negative because people have their own frustrations, they have their own points of view. I really respect that. Earlier today, Collector with DHS called me out on Twitter saying, hey, maybe DHS doesn't have an interest in that ranch and it feels like we're being a bit, used as a prop. To which I said, thank you for telling me that. I'm not going to say, oh, so you're my enemy. You're the bad guy now. I'm going to say, you told me something that you didn't have to tell me. It allows me to move better forward. I'm going to respond and tell you where I was coming from, but ultimately, I always appreciate the feedback. I always appreciate any kind of conversation, and I hope to be able to foster that more.
My last words, as much as we want to go harsh on the crime of the state, we also have to realize people can be rehabilitated. And that is something I said in my campaign trail. I'm very aware of what said about Becks and everything that's ever been said about her. People change and do things for the better. I've worked with her this entire term, and she's done her absolute best for the state sleepless hours, constant harassment, and I don't see the same person from the rumors than I see the person I'm working with. I think she truly wants the best for the state. And I believe there's plenty of people out there who want to change their lives, and discriminating against them purely because of their past means that you don't want a better state. You only see skin deep.
Well put. So now to the final question. It's actually a three-part. It's probably one of my favorite questions to ask. First part. Is there anyone you want to shout out before we end this interview?
Yeah,
That's a good question.
I would like to shout out every previous politician I've worked with before. Every politician who has served before me. I think going through the legislative overhaul showed me just how many people have come together over the years to help build San Andreas. And so to every person who has been a part of that process, whether you're still in the state, whether you've moved on, whether you've left government, thank you. Because honestly, being a part of that chain of continuity, working together for the betterment of the people, it's truly helpful.
A lot of people have helped me along the way. A lot of people have tried to trip me along the way, so I don't want to generalize it. Link Jordan's. He calls me on my bullshit. He is honest and completely doesn't play any games. He doesn't try to be a politician, even though he is one, and tries to butter you up or make you feel better. Doesn't lie behind your back or talk shit. He is a great guy, and he's helped me the entire way, whether it's advice, whether it's just friendship. He's been the person I've known the longest, in both Liberty City and here in San Andreas. He is a great friend, and I would like to shout out him personally. I don't think I'd be here if I hadn't met him so long ago. So,
Second part of the question. Is there anyone you want to send a message to?
Yeah, I think there are people who think, by spreading the rumors, by talking about the corruption thing, by talking about how Becks Lawson is an evil, nefarious schemer, I think those people expect me to be ashamed, to be afraid, to be insulted, to be angry, and ultimately all I can say is thank you for helping to spread the message, because even though you are doing it with malice, with irritation, with anger, with whatever motive you have, I think genuinely you are part of the campaign effort in your own way. And I think, thank you for having my name and my career be so on the forefront of your mind. That is, in its own way, a form of support and fandom that I appreciate.
my phone call. My phone. Sorry, not my phone call. You call people's in action. My phone is always open for questions if you want more accurate information on any smear campaigns. If you want to actually catch me out of context in a recording or lie, I am always open to talking to you. Though I've received 5 threats, one about cutting my head off, actually, and so do what you must. Just don't get physical. I'm a bit fragile, emotionally and physically.
Oh boy.
Also, Merry Christmas! Happy Holidays!
And now the final part of the question, which is actually probably the best part of the question. A little bit confrontational as well. Is there anyone, any department, any civilian that you want to call out?
You know who I would like to call out? I would like to call out the people who complain, but when the polls open, they don't go and vote. So, you'll see people go, the governor never listens to me. The legislature never passes bills I like. I don't like this HR. I don't like that. But when it comes time to actually make some sort of difference, when it comes to speak their mind, suddenly politics are useless and boring and so on and so forth. And it's like, we have had elections in this state determined by literally one voter. Your vote is not useless. And if you want to just excuse yourself from the democratic process, you are more than welcome to. But at the same time, you don't get to complain about the way things turned out because you didn't vote. So I strongly encourage you, if you have opinions, if you want to call me out, if you want to call Maxine out, if you have a bee in your bonnet, go to the polls. It is the most effective thing you can do.
Oh, for me, I'll have to generalize on this one because there's just too many names to call out. The hypocrisy within the government is laughable. I have seen plenty of you both either engage relationship-wise, friendship-wise, or even outright do-it-yourselves and the government these crimes that you accuse Becks of doing. The only reason I have not reported you to the marshals is because I don't have enough evidence. If I did, you'd be seeing some pretty names up there going, I am watching, and just the hypocrisy is hilarious. To San Andreas, people of San Andreas, your government at times does not really care about crimes because they engage on it as well. And the only reason, and I've been told this multiple times, the only reason Becks matters more than anyone else here is because they don't get caught. That's it. If you get caught, you're a clown. If you don't get caught, you are the fucking king. So congratulations, hypocrites.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And now for a bit of a closing note on my end. A lot of people who are listening or reading this are probably wondering why my questions seemed so soft. Well, it's simple. This is a very neutral interview. I'm not here to ambush anyone I have on my show. It's not my business unless we're doing it live, in which case the audience is free to call in at any time. That being
Might as
said,
well be live. You
one of
only
these days.
asked.
One
Sorry.
of these days, I hope I can do it live once again. Like the exchange used to be in a live show. But I also want to end it with a call out myself. I reached out to Damian Key a couple of days ago, asking both for him and Gracie if they were interested in an interview. I have not heard back from them. So consider this a public call out. If you want to do an interview with the same exact questions, just so it's as softball as it was for these two, reach out. If not, then don't worry. But that's been Jack Callow with my two lovely guests, Becks, Lawson, and Maxine Finch. This has been The Exchange. Have a good night, everyone.
It was too hard at the end with the call out Becks.
Nah, you did perfect. That was great.
Oh, beautiful. Jesus
You
Christ,
like it?
that was a good interview.